I didn't think I was going to make another video about this topic. I'm referring, of course, to Mass Effect Andromeda's facial animations. I feel like this is a topic that's been beaten around, and it's one that's been covered enough. But the more I delved into Mass Effect Andromeda, the more I began asking myself just what the hell went wrong. Why do Mass Effect Andromeda's facial animations look so uncanny and at times downright monstrous and hideous? After doing some observations, I think I've managed to narrow it down to a few key points, which by themselves are alright, but when it all comes together in one beautifully monstrous package, you get Mass Effect Andromeda's facial animations, and it all starts with the eyes. If you can't properly animate eyes, the whole face might as well be fucked up. I think the eyes are probably the most important aspect of facial animation. You can kind of fuck up the mouth a little bit, the nose, whatever, certain contortions a bit, may not look all that natural, but if you nail the eyes, it'll still look fine. If you fuck up the eyes, it all goes to shit. And I think that's what happened here. The first thing that I noticed is that the eyes, a lot of them at least, are way too big. When I made my first character in Mass Effect Andromeda, he looked fine in the character creation, but I wished I could make his eyes a little smaller, and the game just wouldn't allow me to do that. There was no option to resize the eyes, which I think is frankly ridiculous, but I figured, it looks all right here in character creation when zoomed out. It should look fine in game, only to find that it yielded an abomination, unlike anything I ever expected. There's so much white space, and not to mention that the eyes are cartoonishly large, and they look really oogly to the point where it's completely disturbing in a setting and environment and amidst graphics that are supposed to be semi-photorealistic. Not all eyes are like that. Some of them are properly proportioned and shaped, but others are just enormous and they occupy so much of the face. They look like goggles. Now, this problem is only compounded by the placement and proportions of the iris and pupils. Those are really important to how eyes look and how they're shaped, but that's one area where I think they really fucked up. It took me a while to figure out what it was, but I think I got it. And there's a particular comparison between one of Mass Effect Andromeda's character and Ashley from Mass Effect 1 that really showcases what the problem is. So when you look at this, I think it's pretty apparent that Ashley's facial expressions look very natural on the right here, whereas on the left, you see a demonic being whose eyes are piercing through your soul. And at a glance, it is difficult to tell what makes these two faces look so different. What's so different about their eyes that's creating this uncanny valley effect? It's a very subtle difference, but it is there, and it starts with the placement of the iris. I found that people look most normal when their iris are shaped in an upward-facing half-moon shape. So if you look at my eyeballs right now, right? I am looking at you in a very normal fashion. I'm not doing anything particularly out there, but if you look at the eyes right now, you can see that they're shaped like this at the moment because the upper portion of the eyelid is covering up the sort of the upper half of my iris, and you can still kind of see the curvature of the lower portion of the iris, and this creates a very normal looking facial look. But it's once I do this, right? Once I do this, where you can see most of the iris, that's when it starts to become a little creepy. When the iris is dead in the middle, and it is not positioned in the way that you would normally want to, which is that half-moon, upwards-facing half-moon shape, there's just something creepy about it. It's like they're staring into your soul, right? And then when I come back down here, it looks normal again. But then when I'm back up here, holy shit, that's creepy. Especially when you have to stare at this for minutes at a time, which is what Mass Effect Andromeda is. A lot of dialogue, a lot of conversations, and this is staring right back at you all the time. Just look at the comparison here. You look at Ashley on the right, and the iris is shaped as I described, that upwards facing half moon shape. But then you look at the character on the left, and their iris is dead in the center, and their eyes just evoke this sense of creepiness as a result. And it doesn't help that the pupils in Mass Effect Andromeda are extremely prominent. Going back to this example, look at Ashley's eyes. The pupils are barely visible, and the eyes look normal, but on the left, you can very clearly see that black dot in the center. A good example of this effect is if you look at Marilyn Manson. This particular image right here, for example, you can see that one eye is properly placed and shaped, and the pupils aren't all that prominent. So if you just look at that half of the face, it looks like a fairly normal face. It's only once you go to the other side where he's wearing contacts featuring this demonic looking eye, and the reason for this is again because the iris is dead center and the pupils are very prominent. And this isn't the only case in Mass Effect Andromeda where this happens. Even Ryder, sometimes and from certain angles and certain scenes, you can really see that pupil, and it creates that uncanny, demonic, creepy effect. Whereas in Mass Effect 1, I felt like they did a really good job in making sure that the pupil didn't stick out too much. You know, if you have blue eyes, the pupils will naturally stick out because they're a lighter color usually, but it is still possible to blend the pupil and the iris a little better so that the pupil sticks out a little less and so that you look a little less demonic. But Mass Effect Andromeda doesn't pay attention to that detail, and the results are truly terrifying. There's this Marilyn Manson effect happening in a lot of these characters whose pupils really stick out. It also doesn't help that their eyes are all very twitchy. It's like they can't focus in one place. They're always darting about in a bizarre fashion. And not to say that normal people don't do that, but it just doesn't happen that way. When I'm having a conversation with someone, I'll sometimes look at them right in the eye and say blah, 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 blah. And, you know, if it gets a little uncomfortable, I'll look away for a bit. And I'll still talk and be like, yeah, so the weather's nice, right? And then I'll look back at them. But it'll never just dart off in this weird, awkward fashion or twitch like this. I'll just look away for a second. And it's a sort of very subtle thing. And it doesn't happen nearly as frequently. The movement of the iris doesn't happen nearly as frequently as it does in Andromeda, so it still feels natural when you look at it from a real life perspective. But in Andromeda, this is constantly happening. Compounded by this. Compounded by the pupils. And it all comes together to create, again, a truly monstrous effect. And then there are the technical aspects of it, where you sometimes see that the eyes go haywire. In certain scenes, the eyes look great, and then the next one, for some reason, you'll see the eyes are like drooping like this. And then the person is looking at you with the centered iris, and the prominent pupil, and the twitchy thing that they do with their eyes, and it all comes together to create a truly hideous sight. And then all of this is wrapped up together nicely by the fact that all of the facial animations are very stilted. This just doesn't move all that much. The mouth moves, but then like everything else, the skin, the eyes, they just stay there. And most often than not, characters have one expression, and that's pretty much it. And it's especially creepy when that default expression is a smile. Cora has that. I noticed that when I'm playing the initial portions of the game, the Pathfinder is detailing this mission, and she's standing there very upright and formal and soldier-like, but her face is like this. And she is just constantly staring at you with this smile. And it's not nearly as bad as it is on Sarah Ryder. The female Ryder is by far the worst in that regard. If you go to the character creation right now and check out what her default expression is, it's this. Male Ryder has just a sort of normal, kind of relaxed expression, but you look at Sarah Ryder and she's always smiling. And when you compound all that with all the problems with the eyes, and this is happening constantly, throughout the whole game. And she's darting off and staring off with a smile. And even when in serious situations, all she's doing is smiling. Don't move. Like, that shit looks crazy. Characters should have a wide range of facial emotions and expressions, and their default face shouldn't be a constant smile. That's just creepy. In real life, if you meet someone who smiles at you constantly, it is really, really unnerving. Because they're smiling constantly, and it feels like they're hiding something, that there's something more behind the veil. Like this person might murder you with that smile. The last point I want to make is that the animators over at BioWare don't seem to understand just general acting or just general human facial expressions. And the best example of this that I can provide is after the tutorial mission, and this is especially prominent for Sarah Ryder. After the tutorial mission, she kind of wakes up, she stands up, and she makes this pained kind of grimace where she kind of goes like that. But it's super creepy, and the reason for that is because that's not how a human reacts to pain. If an actor did that on stage, that's just bad acting. I'm not sure why BioWare couldn't just, like, have an actor reenact what it would feel like to just stand up and be in a little bit of pain. It's certainly not whatever the fuck Sarah Ryder is doing there. She looks like she's about to give birth. If you wake up and you're sore, you don't go... That's not what you do. I think if someone's sore and they're trying to get up, I think it's more along the lines of... You know, like, it's very subtle. It's not a thing that requires ginormous contortions in the face. What BioWare doesn't seem to understand with this game is that human beings oftentimes try to hide their emotions. They try to hide it as best as they can. And I think it's what leaks out that makes human emotions look normal, if that makes any sense. As an example, if you want to express that someone's sad, this is not, I'm sad. That's not great acting. That's just you being sad, like trying to really highlight the fact that you're sad. But a normal human being would try to oftentimes hide that sadness. And that's when sadness feels real. So instead of doing this, I'm sad, when you're like just not doing much with your face, but you know, you just your voice, your just slower demeanor, maybe. You're just not doing much, but you can kind of see a little sadness through this, and it doesn't require this. When you're supposed to act angry, a lot of people just go like this. Oh, I'm angry. Damn it. God, I'm so angry. But that's not how humans react to anger normally. It starts off very subtle, and it's something that builds up, and it's something that people often try to hide. So anger can look like this. It can be a poker face, and you may be able to pick up anger just from subtle glances, and maybe like a shaky voice, and just little things, the way they breathe, the way they're talking. That expresses more of a natural anger than this. Unless you really have to go out there and be like, fuck, and you're really snapping. Unless that's the case. If you're going for subtlety, the goal is to be a human, and humans try to hide emotions. And so in the case of this particular scene, Ryder shouldn't be doing that shit, because a normal human being would just kind of, right? Subtle. And it's like, they don't want to be like, oh God, oh, it hurts. Oh, Jesus Christ. They want to avoid that if they can, us humans. We want to contain everything. We want to keep it to ourselves, and we want to not look ugly and ridiculous in front of others. So we kind of stop ourselves before we express ourselves too much. That, I think, is the key to a normal looking human, to a well-acted human. And that's something that the BioWare animators don't seem to understand. And when you add on top of that, the weird eyes with the weird iris placement and the prominent pupils and the constant smiling or the constant stiltedness. You know, it all comes together to create an utter disaster. I really don't think it takes a genius to see this. It's there. It's just BioWare decided to not do anything about it because they thought this was good enough. Or either that or EA rushed them somehow. Maybe they did want to spend more time with it. I frankly don't know whose fault it is, but it is still unacceptable, and I still am having a hard time immersing myself in conversations, in scenes, in moments, in character interactions that should be fantastic if it weren't for this. I think I've said enough. Let me know in the comments below what you think about my thoughts on why the facial animation in this game looks off. Do you think I'm on the right track, or do you think it's something else? I'm not a professional facial animator, so I wouldn't know. This is just my observation based on the fact that I've lived as a human being for decades and I know what human faces look like, and I've studied other games' facial expressions and even facial expressions from Mass Effects 1, 2, and 3, and those look way more natural because, again, the irises are positioned properly, the pupils aren't as prominent, except for like maybe the Elusive Man who has that weird cybernetic looking eye with the weird pupils, but that works for that character because this character is supposed to evoke a sense of uneasiness. Previous games also just had more natural looking facial expressions. It's like they actually knew how human beings act, and it wasn't perfect. There were really strange looking facial moments in the original trilogy as well, but not nearly to this degree. So let us know in the comments below if you think I'm on the right track, and if not, let me know why you think the faces look so damn weird. And to be further updated on more gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.